The gentle dawn light filtered through the dense leaves of Centennial Park, casting down onto the leaf-covered trail. Lila Barnes, a 35-year-old woman with tight curly hair and deep-set eyes, sat quietly on an old wooden bench. She was in no rush, simply allowing herself to blend into the slow rhythm of life in Atlanta, a city full of untold stories and the quiet shadows of injustice. On the outside, Lila looked no different than a homeless person. Worn-out clothes, a tired face, and hands roughened by hardship. But inside, she carried a strong soul and an unrelenting thirst for justice and truth. This city, with its bustling streets and bright lights at night, was a place where racial discrimination and abuse of power quietly burned in the dark. The ignored stories, the silenced voices, all were listened to, felt, and remembered by Lila. And it was here in this seemingly simple stillness that her challenging journey began. A journey not only for herself, but for those society had abandoned. Lila Barnes was not just an ordinary woman. She was a journalist who had stepped into a turbulent life with a mission to shed light on the truth, even if it meant sacrifice and danger. Today, she took on a new role, silently stepping into the underground world of the homeless to get closer to the police force where many secrets were hidden behind fortified walls. She knew well that to change the system, she first had to understand every corner of it and sometimes live with the wounds the system caused. But in Lila's eyes, the fire of hope always burned. Hope for a day when justice would no longer be just a distant dream. And the story of Lila Barnes, a woman amid the shadows of Atlanta, would guide listeners through waves of emotion from pain and outrage to strength and unshakable determination. This story was not just about her, but about us all, about society and the values we hold dear. Before we dive into the main story, leave us a comment. Where are you listening to this story and what time is it? How did this story reach you and who has it touched? All right, let's begin. The soft light of dusk slipped through the small living room window, illuminating the thoughtful face of Lila Barnes. She sat opposite her closest friend, sharing a family story few knew, the story of her brother Marcus, who had suffered deeply from a case of police abuse of power. Marcus was never one to cause trouble. Lila began, her voice gentle but heavy. He was just a regular man trying to support his family. Her friend nodded, listening intently. Lila continued, but one night when Marcus was stopped on the street, everything changed. The police used excessive force, beating him mercilessly. He was severely injured, not just physically, but mentally too. Lila paused, her eyes shining with deep pain. She knew those wounds wouldn't heal easily, not just for Marcus, but for her entire family. He lost not only his health, but also his faith in justice, Lila went on. My mother cried every day and I felt utterly powerless. That conversation wasn't just a personal story, but a voice representing millions of Black families enduring the same pain. In-depth analysis of the psychological impact of police violence shows it causes long-lasting effects like PTSD, depression, and social isolation. These wounds affect not just individuals, but also fracture family bonds, creating a vicious cycle of pain and loss. In another conversation, Lila recounted meeting a community psychologist who explained, people who experience police violence often carry fear, not just of law enforcement, but of their own communities. They lose their sense of safety, something everyone deserves. Lila remembered that advice and understood that healing these wounds required more than material support. It needed understanding and empathy from society. Marcus's story and Lila's family stand as living proof that police violence is not just an individual problem, but a deep social issue demanding comprehensive attention and resolution. Those painful memories became the powerful drive pushing Lila into a difficult yet meaningful journey, one where no one would have to suffer the injustice Marcus endured. On a chilly autumn morning, sunlight streamed through the window of a small meeting room at the FBI headquarters in Atlanta, illuminating the determined face of Lila Barnes. Before her stood Agent Williams, handing her a life-changing mission, a task not for the faint-hearted. Lila, this isn't an ordinary job, he said seriously. I want you to go undercover in the local police force, where many cases of abuse of power and corruption are happening. Lila looked Agent Williams straight in the eye without hesitation. I'm ready. I know what I have to do. However, the truth was that inside Lila's soul, a great battle was raging. She had to live two parallel lives, one as a young homeless woman abandoned by society, and the other as an FBI investigator, quietly gathering evidence to change the system. On her first day stepping into this new role, Lila wore tattered clothes, blending in among the other homeless people. She felt the scrutinizing, even contemptuous stares from those around her, but she refused to be defeated. Every step was a choice, to keep her secret identity and complete the mission. Life outside was far harsher than she had imagined. Cold nights, insufficient meals, and an invisible loneliness that felt like towering walls separating her from the outside world. It feels like being left behind. Lila confided during a video call with her closest friend, "But I know I have to do this. It's the only way I can make a difference." Along with the physical challenges, the psychological pressure was even heavier. She had to stay constantly alert, never revealing her true identity. Every word and gesture had to be meticulously controlled, making her feel as if she were living in a never-ending movie. During one encounter with a group of homeless people, Lila tried to keep her distance, but the stories they shared deeply moved and resonated with her. That was the reason she persisted, so that every piece of evidence she gathered could help people like them. Agent Williams once warned her, "Lila, you might feel lonely, even betrayed. But don't forget why you started." Lila quietly held on to those words like a guiding light during her darkest moments. That double life demanded not only skill, but extraordinary courage and perseverance. Every day, Lila moved closer to uncovering the truth, but also grew more distant from loved ones in a normal life. Still, she understood this sacrifice was necessary, because if no one stood up, the shadow of injustice would stretch on forever. And in her heart, the flame of faith and hope still burned bright, ready to light the path ahead, the path of justice and change. Listen. The dark, gloomy night sky blanketed Atlanta's streets, streetlights flickering faintly through light foam like the wary eyes of the homeless people Lila Barnes lived among. Amid torn blankets, in the cold wind, she stood silently in the shadows, a woman lost in the flow of life. Her double life was not an easy story to tell. Outwardly, Lila was a well-trained FBI investigator with a special mission and noble ideals. But inside, she had to live the false identity of a homeless person, abandoned by society and treated like a ghost. Every day was a series of physical and mental challenges. Sleeping outside in freezing cold wasn't something I ever imagined I'd endure. Lila thought during bitterly cold nights as biting winds cut to the bone. But she was not allowed to give up, for on her shoulders rested a mission greater than herself. Loneliness came not only from having no family nearby, but from keeping an absolute secret unable to share with anyone. Every story, every gaze she met on the streets brought pain and a burden of responsibility inside her. In a brief conversation with another homeless person, she listened to stories of abandonment, societal cruelty, and shattered dreams. Lila understood she was not just representing herself, but speaking for those without a voice. Agent Williams had warned Lila, "You're stepping into dangerous territory, not just physically, but mentally. Endurance and inner strength will be the only things that get you through." Lila remembered those words every time she felt exhausted. She knew that to hold on to the mission, she had to constantly balance two lives, one real life with ideals and work, the other a fabricated life full of danger and traps. She had to face the fear of being discovered, the suspicion of those around her, and her own loneliness to the utmost degree. But day by day, her mental strength was forged stronger. Each challenge overcome brought her closer to truth and justice. Lila's internal struggle was proof of human resilience, showing that no matter the circumstance, if we have purpose and will, we can stand firm and change the world. Her double life was not only a story of sacrifice, but a symbol of perseverance and strength rising above all adversity. And amid the city's shadows, the flame of hope in her heart still burned fiercely, guiding the way toward justice. The flashing lights of a police car swept across the mossy road, shining directly on Lila Barnes as she wandered through the neighborhood. It was a cold night, her footsteps quietly blending with the other homeless people. Suddenly, the siren blared, pulling her back to the harsh reality. "Stop! Stay still and put your hands up," a sharp officer's voice commanded. Lila knew this moment would change everything. She did not react quickly, did not struggle, because she understood this was part of her mission, but also the toughest challenge. Officer Ryan Caldwell and his colleagues swiftly approached handcuffed Lila and put her into the police car. All eyes on the street turned toward her, some curious, others contemptuous. Inside the car, the harsh, demeaning, and commanding words of the officers sent chills down Lila's spine. They called her insulting names, pushing her into the dark corner of humiliation. Don't pretend you're someone important, Ryan said, his voice dripping with contempt. Just a street guinea pig. But Lila remained calm, hiding a tiny recording microphone in her sleeve. Every word, every act of brutality was carefully recorded evidence she would use to expose the dark corners of power. At the police station, things got worse. She was placed in a small room under cold, harsh lights, where she endured harassment and threats from officers who had long lost any sense of professional dignity. I suggest you remember your place, a threatening voice said, as they forcibly cut her hair, an act not just of violence, but also one that stripped away her dignity. Those images and sounds were captured by Lila, living proof that abuse of power within the police force was far from rare. Comparing to famous cases of police abuse in American history, from Rodney King to George Floyd, the actions of these officers reflected a long chain of unchecked misconduct. Lila's story was not merely a personal case, but a symbol of a warped system where power became a tool of oppression rather than justice. Once the recorded evidence was revealed, the community erupted. Human rights organizations demanded investigations and strict punishment. But in the hidden corners of the system, Lila knew she had just opened a door full of challenges. She had to prepare for the days ahead, legal battles, personal attacks, and relentless pressure from both outside and within. Yet above all, she believed the truth would eventually come to light, and justice would no longer be shadowed by the darkness of abused power. What's the dim light filled the closed meeting room at the Atlanta Police Department, where Maya Rivers stood facing a decision that could change her life. The young officer, sharp-eyed and resolute, knew that standing for the truth wouldn't be easy. It might cost her everything: her career, colleagues, and sometimes even her personal safety. Maya had once been part of the system, a law enforcement officer believing in justice and order. But through what she witnessed, abuse of power and cover-ups, that belief began to crumble. Hearing Lila Barnes' story, a woman courageously recording evidence of police misconduct, stirred an undeniable urge in Maya. In a secret meeting at a quiet cafe, Maya said, "I've seen too much to stay silent any longer. We have to do something, and I want to stand with you." Lila looked at Maya, eyes full of hope and gratitude. "Thank you, Maya. Your support is not just personal. It's a beacon of hope for the whole community." From then on, the two worked together, gathering more evidence from inside the system. Maya used her position to access documents, record conversations, and uncover complex relationships within the police force. Maya's bravery, a member inside the system, broke the wall of silence and created a ripple of strength. She stood not only for justice, but inspired others to rise to speak the truth. Sociologist Dr. Nathaniel Carter once noted, "In any system, change often begins with individuals daring to resist from within. They are the crucial agents breaking injustice." Maya and Lila became symbols of connection between inside and outside the system, between those who want change and those who suffer injustice. However, Maya's presence also meant risks. She faced suspicion, isolation from colleagues, and immense mental pressure. But her determination and will to protect justice helped her overcome every challenge. One dark night, Maya confided in Lila, "There are times I feel like I'm alone in a sea of people. But knowing you're with me, fighting alongside, makes me stronger." Lila replied with a smile, "We are not alone. The power of truth will always find a way to shine." Their partnership became living proof of courage and unity's power in the fight against injustice. Amid challenges, they remained steadfast, inspiring all who seek light in the darkness of oppression. When the light in the Atlanta District Courtroom shone into every corner, highlighting the tense faces gathered inside. Whispered voices, probing glances, and furrowed brows created a stifling atmosphere. Lila Barnes entered with confident steps, her shaved head marked by much suffering, shining with determined eyes. As she stood before the judge, the murmurs quieted. Everyone eagerly awaited the testimony of the woman who had shaken the local police system. "Your Honor," Lila began, her voice clear and deliberate, "I am not an ordinary homeless person as many believe. I am an FBI agent here to reveal the truth about the abuses I have recorded from within." A wave of shock and chaos swept the courtroom. The police officers present grew uneasy. Their faces paled, and their eyes avoided the sharp gazes of the judge and public. The defense attorney tried to maintain composure and spoke up. "Ms. Barnes, was your evidence obtained legally? Does your impersonation and infiltration of the police force violate ethics or the law?" Lila did not hesitate to respond. "All my actions were carried out under FBI directives and federal law." The sole purpose is to protect justice and citizens' rights. Immediately, the video recordings and images captured during Lila's encounters with the police were displayed on a large screen. Every act of abuse of power, brutality, insults, and violations of human rights were clearly revealed to everyone. The audience's reaction shifted from surprise to outrage. Witnesses began to testify in support, confirming the truth of what was presented. Legal pressure mounted on the accused officers as they faced undeniable evidence. The stern judge said, "We stand at a critical turning point in safeguarding justice and human rights. All violations will be thoroughly investigated and strictly punished." In that moment, the truth was no longer vague, but clear and undeniable. Lila Barnes, once looked down upon by society, had become a symbol of courage and justice. The curtain hiding misconduct had been lifted, paving the way for a small revolution within the community and legal system. Those who had once been silent now found strength to speak out. The trial explosion was not only a legal event, but also a powerful message to society: justice can be delayed, but never defeated. Under Atlanta's bright morning sun, Freedom Park became the focal point of an unprecedented event, a peaceful yet powerful demonstration where thousands gathered to support Lila Barnes and the movement against police abuse of power. Shouts, colorful banners, and determined faces blended to create an atmosphere filled with vitality and strong belief. Sarah Thompson, a veteran community activist, stood on stage, her passionate voice ringing out to the crowd. "We are not just standing up for Lila, but for all who have suffered injustice. Unity is our greatest strength." Around them, calls for change, fairness, and transparency echoed continuously. The media quickly covered the story, spreading images of the movement not just across the city, but nationwide. This movement was not a single event, but part of a larger wave, the Black Lives Matter movement, which has been deeply transforming social awareness about racial discrimination and police abuse of power. Marcus, a university student participating in the protest, shared Black Lives Matter, showed me the power of collective voice. Today, we continue that journey, and Lila is an indispensable part of it. Social organizations, civil rights groups, and prominent individuals voiced support, urging lawmakers to consider and implement necessary reforms. Social media exploded with the hashtag #JusticeForLila, attracting millions of views, comments, and shares. However, not everyone agreed. Voices of opposition efforts to diminish the movement's influence came from conservative groups and police unions. But the spirit of unity and the resolve not to yield remained a persistent flame igniting the community's heart. At a press conference featuring Lila and activists, it was emphasized, we cannot stay silent before injustice. Each of us has the right and responsibility to stand up for justice. The movement spread not only pushed policy changes, but also inspired the younger generation and those who once thought their voices didn't matter. Lessons from Black Lives Matter and Lila Barnes' movement affirmed one truth: only when the community stands united can justice prevail. And amid that current, every individual can become part of the great change. Soft lights in the city meeting room shone down on the tense faces present. Maya Rivers, Lila Barnes, and a group of social activists faced a harsh reality. The fight against police abuse was not only on the streets, but also silently, persistently fought within police unions and political councils. Thomas Barrett, president of the police union, stood up with a commanding voice. "We represent officers who have sacrificed to protect social security. Any efforts to undermine their morale and rights will be strongly opposed." These words formed a stone wall blocking the reform plans Lila and her colleagues hoped to carry out. The police union not only defended its members, but also politically lobbied to maintain power and influence within the system. Maya spoke up with determination. "We don't want to sabotage anyone. We only seek transparency and fairness. When power is unchecked, abuse continues and the people suffer the most." But political pressure from interest groups and factions within the government made every reform attempt more complicated than ever. Some leaders feared that rapid changes would cause instability or reduce support from law enforcement. Emily Santos, a young legislator, shared in a private meeting, "We face a conservative system where change is threatened by local interests and fear of losing power. But we can't give up because of that." Difficulties were inevitable. Prolonged debates, reform proposals delayed or watered down. Both Maya and Lila recognized that changing the police system required a long, persistent, and strategic struggle. In a private conversation, Lila told Maya, "Sometimes I feel exhausted, like I'm fighting against an invisible wall. But looking back at what we've done, I know I have to keep going." Maya nodded, her eyes blazing. "We are not alone. Change doesn't happen overnight, but every step counts." The ideological battle between protecting individual interests and demanding transparency and fairness was the core reason police reform was not simple. Broad social consensus and multi-party involvement were decisive factors. These challenges were not just about policy, but about the perseverance of those willing to stand and fight for a fairer future. No matter how hard it was, the flame of hope still burned brightly in the hearts of Maya Lila and millions fighting alongside them. Ika. The Atlanta sky was painted with the soft golden light of late afternoon as Lila Barnes stepped out of the community meeting room, her eyes shining with renewed determination. Her journey from a secret FBI undercover living in the shadows to a strong social activist marked a pivotal turning point in her life. After exhausting days facing the system, enduring pressure and risks, Lila realized the fight was not only fought in courtrooms or secret files. She needed to become a public voice, a source of inspiration for those who shared her plight. At a gathering in the community center, Lila stood before the crowd with an emotional voice. "Before I was behind the scenes quietly gathering evidence. But now I choose to stand here with you speaking the truth, defending the voiceless." Applause erupted loudly, not only for her story, but for the rare sincerity and courage she showed. Every attentive gaze, every nod of sympathy was proof of the power one individual can have to create great change. But the path was not easy. The psychological impact of hiding her identity, living in isolation and facing betrayal left deep wounds. Lila shared with the psychologist, "I used to feel lost, directionless. But I learned that inner strength doesn't come from avoiding pain, but from facing and overcoming it." That inner strength not only kept Lila steadfast on her journey, but it also became a flame inspiring the community. She organized workshops, provided legal support, and especially encouraged the younger generation not to hesitate to stand up for justice. A young participant in the program told her, "Lila, your story makes me believe I can make a difference. I'm not alone, Hassan." Lila smiled, her eyes shining bright. "We are part of the change. Every small step today creates a fairer future." Analysis of Lila's inner strength, along with that of other activists, shows that despite severe psychological trauma, perseverance and belief in the cause can help overcome all challenges. Lila's personal journey from an undercover agent to a social activist stands as proof of courage, endurance, and an unyielding will. It also reminds us that everyone can be a light in the darkness, guiding justice and hope. Men, bright morning light streamed through the glass windows of the Atlanta City Council chamber, where Lila Barnes met with legislators, representatives of social organizations, and experts to discuss the future of the police force. The atmosphere was full of hope, yet carried heavy pressure and challenges. Lila stood up, her voice filled with conviction and determination. "We cannot continue to live in a system where abuse of power still happens. Requiring officers to wear body cameras throughout their shifts will create necessary transparency, protecting both staff and citizens." David Miller, a veteran legislator, nodded in agreement. "Surveillance cameras have proven effective in many major cities like New York, Seattle, and Los Angeles. They help reduce abuses and increase accountability." However, dissenting opinions from some officers and police unions were undeniable. They worried that constant monitoring could limit freedom in their work and create unnecessary pressure. Lila shared multicultural training and raising awareness within the police force are also key factors. When officers better understand the communities they serve, respect and empathy can grow. Karen Tron, representing a nonprofit supporting minority communities, emphasized, "Training must be ongoing and practical, helping police understand the history, culture, and traumas experienced by the communities." Strict handling of citizen complaints was also prioritized. Lila and activists proposed establishing an independent system to receive and investigate reports, avoiding internal cover-ups. Pressure from conservative groups and some officers who viewed these changes as challenges to traditional authority and effectiveness made the debates tense, but resolve remained strong. Lila looked out the window, sunlight filtering through the trees like a glimmer of hope, piercing through difficulties. She knew the journey was long and challenging, but could not stop. Miller concluded, "We cannot expect an immediate change, but with determination and cooperation, every small step makes a big difference." These reforms were not just legal documents, but promises for a fairer future where everyone is respected and protected. And amidst difficulties, the flame of hope continued to burn bright, lighting the way forward. In the dim light of dusk, Lila Barnes stood atop a hill overlooking the sprawling city of Atlanta. Skyscrapers mixed with busy traffic painted a vivid but complex portrait of urban life. A gentle breeze carried the city's breath and the breath of change. Within Lila, the fire of hope still blazed, a fire not easily extinguished by any hardship or challenge. She knew her journey was far from over. The fight for justice and fairness was still long and fraught with obstacles ahead. She whispered to herself, "This is not just my story, but the story of everyone longing for a better world." Around her, images of the community, those who stood with her, spoke out, took action, were an endless source of strength. They were the ones making a difference, shining lights in the darkness of injustice. Lila turned and looked straight at the listener, her voice gentle but powerful. "You can also be part of this struggle. Speak up when you witness injustice. Act to protect the vulnerable. And above all, hold fast to your faith in justice, even when the world seems to challenge it." A young friend beside her, eyes full of determination, asked, "How do I keep that strength when everything around me seems to be against it?" Lila smiled, her gaze tender. "Strength comes from unity, from perseverance, and from believing that every step, even the smallest, matters. Never lose your voice." And before the story closed, Lila delivered a profound warning. "Silence today is complicity tomorrow." That was not just a warning, but a call to awaken, urging each of us to stand up, speak out, and act. If this story touches your heart, subscribe to our channel to continue spreading stories that have the power to change society. Because change begins with each individual, every moment you choose not to stay silent. And remember, the world needs your voice right now.